Welcome. Today we're going to be airbrushing some Emperor's Children. I like to do this kind of purple to a lighter pink style. And let's see. Okay. All right. So today we're going to be airbrushing Emperor's Children to get an effect like this where the armor panels kind of fade from a purple in the shadows to a bright pink in the highlight. You can see with this model, I've gone ahead and done that and just painted the sword, which I also used an airbrush on. Uh, so we're going to be trying to achieve this effect, but on some unpainted noise marines today. So they can match with the rest of the army as I get to painting. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with a black base coat. So I like to use the Vallejo Black Primer. I think it's my favorite black. Make sure to put plenty in there because we're going to go over the whole squad. These models are quite large. And then going to put just a couple drops. I like to use lately the Vallejo Airbrush Flow Improver. I feel like I get good results. I used to use the thinner, but I feel like the Flow Improver works a little bit better. I'm going to put just a few drops of that. I like to always test the consistency with an old brush that I used to mix inside the airbrush. So to mix that up, and then let's see if we can get this just right. I like to pull the paint up and see how it runs back down the side. I like it to be a consistency where it's not so thick that it sticks, but it's also not so thin that it runs down quickly. This actually looks pretty good so far. So we can go ahead and do a little bit of a trial here. I feel like what we're getting on this paper towel is pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and start just base coating. When I get nice coverage of black over the whole model, it'll really help already shade the recesses, and then we'll get a bright pop from the pink when we go over that. I'm also using black as the armor color, kind of accent color, along with some metallics. So by starting with black, we can achieve a good effect, even though we'll go over it in pink. I don't really like to base coat starting with white, even if the model is going to be lightly colored, unless it's going to be white itself. I prefer to start with black and then go over that with white ink. I tend to get better results that way. I feel that a lot of the white paint that I've tried has trouble with getting good coverage. And what that'll cause is that the paint will kind of create this layer that might peel off later. And that can be kind of undesirable because everything that you do, all your hard work, will kind of leave if it peels off. And even once it's dried, it's just not very strong. But I feel like this black tends to give a really strong base coat that dries quickly. So you can kind of quickly move on to other colors without damaging the integrity of that base coat you put down. Okay. I feel like actually I ended up making the black a little bit thin. So I'm going to go ahead, put just a couple more drops in there. Shake it up. I'm going to go ahead and mix that again with our brush. Can even test it here in this piece of tape. Looks pretty good. Okay. These noise marines were really fun to build. It's a kit I was looking forward to for a long time, and I feel like they did a really good job. I like the kind of the bulkiness and the strength that you can feel in the design. They really feel like they're slowly moving forward with these really cool weapons they have. I'm also really looking forward to paint these models. They have a lot of good detail. So far the basic infantry have been really fun. But some of my favorite elements on these miniatures are the kind of vials and things and attachments to the armor, and I feel that with the Noise Marine kit, they really did a good job including a lot of those little elements that are really fun. Now, because this is such a kind of large model, it takes a little bit of time to get the priming done. I like to clean my airbrush by using a pipette with water and just kind of taking the liquid in and out a couple times. I find that this will help dislodge any paint that's kind of dried or little paint pieces that have collected in the funnel of the airbrush. Then I take some, say, dirty water and just use that to flush out the airbrush. I run that into a paper towel for a second. I dump out the dirty water, let it run. I do one more wipe, and then I get some clean water. Flush a little bit more. And then as long as it's coming back clean, I just go ahead and dump out the clean water. And if you run the airbrush, it'll actually kind of dry most of itself. Okay. So we're going to go back to that black primer, do a little bit more in the sky, and then we'll work up to the purple to the bright pink. Okay. Go back to the flow improver. Okay. Mix that together. Consistency looks good. We might need to thin it down a bit more, but we'll see. I think that's perfect. All right. Go ahead, just do a little bit more in here. Make sure we got good coverage on this guy. Clean off the airbrush a bit. Try to make sure we hit every angle. One of the difficulties I found is that I'll hit it every way that I think, and then I'll turn it to some kind of odd angle and find that I miss that area. Especially like here, you can see there's like a bottom of the canister, bottom of this gun. It might not face correctly, or even the gun from down here. Doing all these elements will really help make sure that you don't have to go back and do another layer of primer or anything like that. It can be annoying because if you get all the way to layering and you can't come back to kind of an efficient method for priming, your colors might not stick and your base coat will be thicker where you've had to go in with the brush. So I like to make sure that I've gone fully over the model so I don't have to go back. Okay. I think We're looking pretty good. Priming the models before painting them helps to make sure that the paint doesn't lift off later. That's when I say often if you start with a primer that isn't good, even once it's dry, it can lift off once you've gone painting, and then you kind of ruins all of your progress. But a good primer will stick really well and allow you to layer without worrying about chipping. And that kind of preserves your progress into the future. I feel like the Vallejo Black Primer does a really good job of doing this while ensuring that you get a good quality result. So I like to start with the Vallejo Black Primer, even if I'm going to move to white afterward. That way I can ensure that at least the foundation is strong, and the white will actually apply better over the black, even if it takes some time to build up. One way to counteract the issue with starting with black and then moving to white is to use white ink afterward, which will apply smoother over the black while still giving you a really good base to start from. Move this head forward. I've gone ahead on all these models and placed putty on the head instead of gluing them down so I can kind of get into the body. I don't like to work too much in sub-assemblies because I feel that I'll end up never finishing the model. I need to kind of have a solid piece and paint only what I can see. But I feel, especially with kind of the Space Marine style armor, it's a little bit easier if you leave the heads off because you can go in and get the metal that kind of goes around the head, and then you can paint the head separately. And it's not too much of an inconvenience for your time, I feel, to go in and just paint the head and then do a quick glue up in the end. I feel that when you leave a weapon off, especially a weapon where the arms connect on both sides, the gluing can be way too difficult later. And that's something that I like to avoid. So especially with a big model like this, where you're going to have to move glue 3 pieces at the same time for the left, right arm, and the weapon, it's better to just start with the airbrush or spray can and have it all glued up. One thing that I'm going to do with here too is I want it all put together because I'm going to airbrush in the highlights of the armor. If you want to look at how this model is going to turn out, this is an infantry squad that I painted, and you'll see here the brightest highlight is applied with the airbrush to these panels, and the underside of the panels are actually a darker purple. And that's what we're going to work through today. And by doing that, we can have these really clean armor panels and just have to go in and paint the details at the end. So if you had your model in sub-assemblies, the issue is that you might not capture where those highlights would need to be very well. But if you build the whole model first, natural shadows will occur, and it kind of saves you steps and thinking too hard about it, because I often just put my airbrush up at an angle and kind of do that from a couple different points, and I'll get what I want in terms of highlights pretty easily. That helps me save a lot of time. And then I feel some people want to paint in the highlights just from one side and make it really realistic. I prefer to sacrifice some realism and have highlights from maybe 2 or 3 angles, like one from the left, one from the right, and then one from the back. That way, if you kind of look at the model from, I think, what would be 3 major perspectives, you'll end up getting a pretty good result or something visually interesting. Okay. It's a little bit hard to film the airbrush here because I typically airbrush with the barrel of the airbrush focusing down the same angle as my eyes. But to turn toward the camera a little bit, it's kind of an adjustment. I don't think it's too bad. It'd be hard to get the camera in the exact angle to be able to pick up what I'm seeing. Gonna go ahead and clean the tip of the airbrush. For many years I kept, there's kind of a guard that goes on the end of this airbrush. So this little piece here, I kept that on the end despite seeing many people keep it off. Um, I'm not sure exactly why. I felt, well, one is that the needle is quite sharp and I was trying to avoid that. But once I took it off, I actually did get a lot better results. I honestly didn't believe everyone when they said it was a little bit more accurate without the guard. But surprisingly, that was true. And I found that once I removed the guard, I was able to airbrush over smaller areas with more accuracy. But my only issue is that if you want to do the backflow technique, and that's where you stop up the end of the airbrush and force air back into the cup to mix the paint. You can't just put your finger over the end because of the needle. You have to take like a thicker piece of paper towel or something to stop the airflow. But honestly, I feel like that's a minor inconvenience. The other major benefit to having the cap off the end of the airbrush is that you can clean the needle faster. One of the biggest things that'll cause your paint to splatter or give you bad results is if paint dries on the edge of the needle. And that can be quickly fixed just by wiping it off. And you'll sometimes, especially when you're dealing with things like white paint, that have an issue with being much too thick and drying on the needle, you'll want to wipe that off probably every couple minutes. And if you have to unscrew that cap every single time, you're really slowing down your painting progress. But if the cap is off, you can take a paper towel and wipe down that needle right away. I found that has improved how fast I can finish an airbrushing step and move on to painting the rest of the model. Now, I feel like getting the airbrush really changed how I approached painting and really helped me achieve some better results, at least with my first base coat, if you don't want to do like a lot of glazing. But I always do, though, prefer when I can finally get to painting by hand. So I like to sit down after I've completed the squad and airbrush in my main colors and maybe a special highlight like... there's some airbrush used on the swords for this squad to get kind of the alternating colors. And so I'll use that. I'll complete those, but then I like to have everything with the airbrush done so that I can really just focus on painting by hand afterward. Difficulties, especially areas here that get under the backpack. Okay, that's 3 of 6 down. I feel like a lot of people will complain about the use of an airbrush in a video or tutorial, feeling it's not beginner friendly. And I have mixed feelings about it because I can totally understand the expense of everything once you've bought models and paint. Having another tool, another expense can be difficult. But at the same time, what I feel is that you can achieve such good results with the airbrush, and I believe you can progress so quickly. It'll actually help you get a lot more projects done, I think, with results you're happy with and more efficiently, which ultimately I think is more beneficial than the cost if you can afford one. And I don't think they have to be that expensive either, compared to the price of models now at least. It's been a few years since I bought mine, but initially the airbrush compressor I use is a very inexpensive one. I saw people using these really expensive models that maintain kind of a perfect air pressure and these other things. I don't have anything like that. I just have a really basic unit with a tank. It'll kick on every couple minutes that I am airbrushing. It'll fill up again, and the air pressure does change a little bit as I work on my project, but I haven't found that to be too big of a problem. I can make adjustments to the air pressure if I need to. And then what I did buy is I bought what I feel is kind of a mid-range brush or airbrush, and I don't think that that was too much of an expense. Not a super fancy model, but it served me now maybe about 6 years, and it's still going strong. If it ever gets totally clogged, I run some lacquer thinner through it or something else like a really strong solvent to break up any paint that's accumulated. I've taken it apart and let some individual pieces soak in some of those solvents to make sure that they completely clean. And I've reassembled the brush, and with just a little bit of maintenance like that, it's lasted a long time. And then I think the benefit specifically is getting projects done. I feel like, everyone in the hobby will talk about having the pile of shame, and I certainly do. I have a lot of projects I'd like to complete. But the big issue, I think, is sometimes not completing those and then moving on to getting more models. And when you have the airbrush, I feel like you can better complete projects, and where you're working on your painting projects consistently, I actually feel like in some way that helps you purchase less models, or fewer, because you'll be focused on working on a certain squad or something like that for a good amount of time, and you'll be occupied. Sometimes you can be frustrated. It can be easy to move on to something new. But I feel like the airbrush will help you get that initial hurdle out of the way. You won't be looking at an army of gray plastic for a long time and not feeling like you'll ever be able to handle it. Because you can go in, you can get the base coat done one day, then you can go in and you can get your base colors in one day, and all of a sudden you have something that honestly will look pretty good. Like with these Emperor's Children, if you go in, you paint in the pink and purple, you go in with a brush, you clean up some of the armor panels with black, you've done no detail work really, but you'll get a result that's so nice that you'll be excited to keep going and kind of see it come to life. And then if you need to take a little break, you'll have these models that have several colors and a lot of detail made clear. And so you can feel pretty good about having made some progress. Now, I'll tell you, when I first got into the hobby, it was a long time ago. It was around 2011. And at that time, they came out with this huge Christmas bundle for the Dark Eldar, or Drukhari as they're now called. And I was really interested in starting playing the game and everything. So I had some money saved up, and I purchased this Christmas, they called it the Megaforce. And at the time, it came with so many models. It was massive. It was a whole army, essentially, like truly in one box, almost 2,000 points. And at the same time that I bought that, I got the regular kind of starter box. At that time, it was called a Battle Force. Now it's like the Combat Patrol boxes. I got one of those for Christmas. So I had so many models. And for a while, even though I was super excited to get started in the hobby, I just let them sit. I did not know what to do. I just felt like this big daunting thing. So when a break came around from school, I was in high school at the time, I sat down and I spent every day of that winter painting until school started. And even once school started, like on weekends, I set up a table in my bedroom, I'd turn on the TV, and I would just build and build and build. And I built this massive army, and then I had an even more massive pile of gray plastic. And I feel like the issue with that is that it was so much more daunting than even building the models. When I had that whole army, it sat around for years. I tried some painting. My first painting project was one of the squads of Dark Eldar witches. And I had met this other individual in town through a whole other kind of means, nothing to do with Warhammer. And when I was at his house one day, I saw that he had the rule books and some of the codices on his bookshelf, and I was like, "Oh, are you into Warhammer? I've never met well anyone else, uh, outside of maybe the store that is involved." And he was like, "Yeah, I've been involved for a long time, and here's what I play." And I was like, "Well, do you paint?" And he was like, "Yeah, I painted a long time." And he said, "I'm actually getting kind of set up to do airbrushing." And at the time, had no idea what that meant. I was like, "Cool. Like, do you think one day maybe we could get together and you could show me some painting techniques? I'm really lost. Like, every time I try to paint, I get the worst results." So he says sure, and one day we meet up at the game store with a couple of his other friends. They were actually really into Blood Bowl at the time, and so they were working on some minis from that. And we start going, and he just teaches me some basic things, just some basic highlighting. I wanted to do like a purple armor for the Dark Eldar, and I had primed them black at the time. And so I got some good advice, and I tried to apply it, and I got mixed results, largely because when I went home, I was trying to paint um, the witch's like bodysuit, and if you know that model, it's very difficult because it's almost like leather stretched over the skin, but there's these cutouts. So you have what should be this kind of like pale flesh underneath this leather or whatever the material would be. So when I did purple, I'm then trying to go in with like some white, and it just, they looked really messy. It was my first models, but I got something on there. But I tried painting some other models or trying out some techniques that I saw online, and I just kind of would paint one model, get frustrated, and stop. And because of that, I spent years with my first army just kind of sitting, models half painted, things half done, or a lot of it just in gray plastic. And it was very disheartening. And I even bought more models to start a second army. That one I really tried to paint. I was doing Necrons at the time, and I tried to do this kind of cream and blue color scheme. In the Codex, it's the Thocht dynasty, and I was really happy with it. Looking back now, I still have some of those models. The paint is really thick and chunky, but um, it was kind of my first time actually completing some projects. And then while my Dark Eldar army stood kind of still in a state of just mess. And it wasn't until several years later, when actually taking a break from the hobby for a long time, when I decided that I would try to learn airbrushing. And I got this kind of cheap setup. I got a mid-range brush. I got a fairly cheap compressor. And what I did was I had just followed some tutorials. I followed Next Level Paintings, basic airbrushing tutorial, stuff like that. And I achieved results so quickly that really just like blew away anything I had done in the past. And I think a big part of that was the fact that because I was able to do my base colors and my base coat with the airbrush, I started painting way more. I made way more progress. I actually started completing projects, and I actually really improved my brush painting because I had started working with the airbrush. I think it was just getting past that initial step was something that was really kind of holding me back from ever making progress. And when I finally had it, it really changed how I painted. And I remember one day after I started airbrushing, I started working on the Lilith Hesperex model for the Dark Eldar, and that model kind of completely changed my painting. I was able to do something that I felt was really good. Oh, let's see. Reading Party 8, hey, the figure looks awesome. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so if you want to see, this is the infantry squad I've started painting, and I'm going to go ahead and try to do the same airbrushing on the Noise Marines. All right, so yeah, what I ultimately ended up doing is I painted that model, and it made such a difference that I actually got really into painting, and it became the highlight of the hobby for me in a way that I hadn't really thought about before. Actually, if you guys want to see, I have the Lilith Hesperex model over here. This was the one that really changed how I painted. So I was able to airbrush the hair on this model, and it totally changed things for me. It's a little bit weak, but I was able to achieve a cool effect. I tried out some of the techniques I saw on YouTube, like doing the zenithal highlighting and then using ink, and some other elements. And after that, I really felt like tackling a lot more projects and started really improving as a painter. Um, oh, thank you. So a really big part of this for me was that when painting became kind of the way I really engaged with the hobby, um, I feel like it really opened up for me because I felt bad sometimes, like, you know, if I wasn't able to play a lot or engage with it in other ways, but it was something I really enjoyed. But now I had something that I could do that really made it feel like mine and made me feel good about all the money I'd spent on models and things because I'm doing what I feel is like a good job painting, and I'm coming out with models that make me happy. And at that time, I actually started playing Age of Sigmar, and I started a Night Hunt army because they were kind of the main antagonists at the time in the starter box. And that's when I really made some progress because I batch painted the whole army with this red and blue color scheme. And I was able to make a lot of progress because I just did a whole army from start to finish. I did this kind of gradation of blue. I did this kind of red flesh color, and then I did like white on the kind of ghostly bits. And I feel like doing that really helped progress my painting a lot. Because I got experience kind of just doing some basic things over and over again. And that was really fun. And then I started working on some specific models, like I did Lady Olander for the Night Hunt, and I feel like she was definitely like a really fun showcase model. That was a big accomplishment. And then I feel like as I started doing those things, I really started to see the results that I really wanted. And then I feel like I reached this point where I was pretty happy with my painting and I wanted something really exciting. And that's when they did the Emperor's Children release. And I just was so excited to get my hands on it. Back in about 2012, 2013, I had looked at the store, my local game store, and I was really interested in playing Chaos and of something. And I said, the Emperor's Children are so cool. I'd recently read some of the Horus Heresy novels. I really liked their lore, and I like Slaanesh, and I was like, I'm gonna do those as my next army. And then I think some time passed, and I saw that they did the first like big Chaos update with the release of Magnus. And I think when they did that, I was like, well, perfect. If they're gonna do all of the Chaos gods, then I'll be able to wait for this Emperor's Children release. So I said, all right, as soon as they update the range, that's what I'm going to do. Well, sure enough, that was 2012, 2013. Here we are getting the release in 2025. I feel like, but on the other hand, that's the time scale that Warhammer releases seem to move at. But I think that's okay because honestly, when this box released, I was feeling confident enough that I could really tackle this army in the way that I'd been looking forward to. And that's really all I wanted. I'm going to take off this head. I have these just on with some poster putty. Just make sure we get some coverage on the back. And I'm really just trying to hit the main armor panels in the way like I have here, and then ultimately the finished one. My goal is to have the braces around the bottom of the leg, the arms, the shoulder panels, and the center of the backpack. I'm going to do all those with this darker purple, and then I'm going to highlight up to a bright pink. So I'm starting with Pro Acryls, just basic purple, and then I'm going to go to the new War Paints Wicked Pink, and then ultimately to Pixie Pink. Give me 1 second. All right, so what's interesting is there's been that update to this range, and I feel like it's been such a huge change because when I first was really getting into painting, I hated the Army Painter paints. I think because they came out way too thin. And I always said if I'm paying for the paint, I want to get something that's thicker and I can essentially water down or thin to my content in a way that feels like I'm getting more value from the paint pot. But when I was buying these paints and they were way too thin, I'm like, I'm pretty much wasting my money. I would have to let them settle so that the paint pigment would fall to the bottom and the kind of carrier fluid, I guess, would rise to the top and then squeeze out half the bottle so that I could just get more concentration of the pigment. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And so I said, I'll never buy Army Painter paint again. But sure enough, I heard they got this new release, and one big thing that I really liked is this system they do here. So they give a series of paint in specific colors that go along this range. That's something I really liked from the Duncan Rhodes paint brand that comes in these color triads of brightness. I feel, of course, you can do some complex paint mixing if you're a pro, but I just feel like getting consistent results is nice, and especially just knowing you have this color. Like, I can do purple really well with this paint brand. It just makes your life a lot easier. So I was excited when I saw that they made that change, kind of like the Duncan Rhodes paint brand, and so I decided to go with them again. And sure enough, this release, these new war paints are really, really good, and they became the basis for the Emperor's Children scheme that I'm going for. You know, I was excited too because they were always like a cheaper paint brand, and I've managed to get plenty of colors for like a lower price, which is really nice. And the dropper bottles are higher quality, and I think, no, I don't think they have the like the ball bearing inside, but they mix up pretty well. And so I'm a convert now. I especially like that they have the color triads. So I would suggest that if you are interested, definitely give them a try if you didn't like them in the past, because they have made major improvements. Okay. I think we're getting pretty close to this guy. I'm just gonna touch up some of the armor panels here a little bit more. I want to finish getting this foundation purple done so we can try out some of the other colors. I saw a lot of people with the Emperor's Children release were doing these kind of alternative color schemes. I think kind of a rejection of the traditional pink. But to be honest, that was like one of the things that I really enjoyed about the Army. I feel like it was very different from the other, other Space Marines, whether Chaos or Loyalist. And so I wanted to be able to keep that, but make it visually interesting. So I think going from this kind of dark purple to a very saturated pink in the middle, and then a lighter pastel pink at the top, gives a nice variation that doesn't feel just stark pink like some of the box art. At the same time, allows you to kind of stay true to the Legion. I think one of my favorite things is that if you look at the pre-Heresy Emperor's Children, their armor is like fully purple and gold. And I feel like it's supposed to be that kind of regal purple, color of royalty and all that. And the transition to the pink and black armor is kind of supposed to show their fall in a way. So I think it's an important element lore-wise, and I like to have a little bit of lore justification in how I paint. And so I wanted to keep that pink for sure without changing it too much. The other kind of lore-based decision I made with these guys is that I wanted to make these marble bases for them to stand on. And when I wanted to do these kind of blood effects to make it look like something they'd killed, the blood had kind of run through the grout, I only put the gore of the blood on their feet, but nowhere on the armor. I wanted the armor to still look very clean. This kind of idea that they're too proud to get their armor dirty, but they're obviously wading through like seas of blood as they do all their horrendous things that they're setting out to do. And then for this color scheme too, I wanted to choose a good accent color. I know that there are the gold elements and some of the silver elements, but I wanted something to stand out alongside the purple. And while I'm not usually a fan of like a super purple and green color scheme, I think it can come across as just like, oh, it's like the Joker colors, you know? I wanted to do just a little bit. And so that's why with this one, see here, I made the vial that he has on his belt, this kind of bright green, and then I made the eye lenses a green. And I feel like that really kind of sells as something that really pops in comparison with the purple pink. I really enjoy too, the color I've used on the swords is a really dark blue-green. It has some elements of the green and is actually the foundation color I've used for the rest of the green. And so by doing that, I can kind of tie everything together a little bit and keep things consistent while doing multiple colors. I think one thing I really enjoy when I'm watching painting videos is where people can kind of keep this color scheme in ways through their color mixing, keep elements harmonious in ways that you don't really expect. And that's kind of my goal here. I've also really enjoyed with these models painting the skin elements. I have this guy here. I think they're really fun inclusion and something that I was really looking forward to painting. It took me a little while to decide exactly how I wanted to do this. I'd done skin before on my Slaves to Darkness for Age of Sigmar, but I want to do something a little bit different. So for these guys, I started with a dark brown base so that I could highlight up to a more flesh color. I did Rakarth flesh, but I kept a little bit of the brown. Then I did a brown wash just to kind of make it look more like a tanned leather. And then how I did the effect actually is I did a red oil wash over the whole thing. And that kind of added just the subtle bit of like gore element. I wanted it to look like it's fresh, not like it'd been like gone from its victim for too long. And then one thing that I think is really important when doing these kind of flesh pieces on a model is that it's stretched, it's like pinned down in some way. And in order to make that look more realistic, I always want to show some kind of distress on the skin where it's connected. So if you look at the points where those metal bolts are, or the rings on the shoulder panel, I've taken a kind of purplish red wash, and I don't apply that over the whole model, just on the points where it's stretched tightest or where it's around a connector. I feel like it gives a bruised effect that kind of breaks up the rest of the model. And then for the bolts, I just went through and I dabbed on just a little bit of metallic, and then I brought that down with a dark wash as well. And that way you can get kind of what I feel like is this kind of freshly like cut off skin effect that I think really highlights this army in a way that would be kind of different from others. Like I've painted Drukhari and I've painted Slaves to Darkness, so I really like those kind of armies that have I think in the old Dark Eldar Codex they called it Grizzly Trophies that they put on their vehicles. But this kind of thing that really brings the model to life as if they're existing within the lore and within the kind of setting that they're supposed to. So I said this earlier, but like a big thing I like is kind of getting my colors airbrushed in and everything solidified for the base coat so that I can go in and do those details by hand. While I have fun getting this in, I do find that doing the details and brush painting is really what I enjoy most. And so I like to have all my models in the squad done with the airbrush, then go in with my brush and do things in kind of whatever order I want. I know batch painting would be more efficient, but I don't mind being a little bit of a slow painter, and as a result, I like to go through and just kind of paint whatever's interesting me at the time. So I'll take like one model and I'll jump back and forth between different elements. Like maybe I'll do leather, maybe I'll do metallics, maybe I'll do special effects. And as I go back and forth, I kind of have something that I can find visually interesting at each point and kind of keeps my focus a little bit more. There's one part that I might have to go back. If you see, there's these couple, like 3 panels here on the back. I missed on a couple of the others, so we'll have to do that quickly at the end. Okay, so we have one more. We'll touch up, and then I'm going to show you the other 2 colors on one of the models, so we don't take up too much time doing the whole squad. But I did want to at least get the foundation color done for this last guy. I try focusing just on the armor panels that I want with the pink purple. I don't mind if it gets anywhere else because I can clean it up, but if I don't have to clean up all of the black, I don't mind. And then if there's any pieces I miss, I won't have to worry too much because they'll kind of be more integrated into the color scheme. I really enjoyed this kind of round backpack design because when I hit it with the highlight of the bright pink, I feel like it really pops. Kind of being the highest point on the model, I feel like you can sell the highlight pretty well. You know, I feel like for me the hardest part of doing any model, especially but like as like a squad, like an infantry squad or something like that, as a lot of models, is doing the first one. My test model always takes me several days. I think it took me 3 or 4 days to do the first guy and really get my color scheme down. I like to just start painting, and I know some people on YouTube will really do these things where they go into Photoshop and they'll kind of like take a photo of the model, they'll try out all these colors, all these things, and I can use Photoshop well, but it's just, to me, one, it feels like a waste of time. Like going into Photoshop, doing all this, I might as well get started. Or I'll end up not starting the model, spending more time in this computer software, which is exactly what I don't want to do. And I also feel like I've taken like a color theory class. You know, I have a degree in art and stuff like that. But what I feel is that I'm not really good at really like doing it from an analytical perspective of deciding colors because they have like a real specific, you know, color theory reason. Like I did talk about the green, but even that was more from just my perspective and what felt right. I really like to go off of, I guess, the vibes at the end of the day when I'm trying to choose my colors rather than anything more than that. I think the reason is I can't really see with the paints I own how something's going to work until it's there on the model itself, not even through Photoshop or anything like that. And so what I want to do is really just start painting. If I don't like something, I'll just paint over it. And I just keep painting over. I've even stripped the model, but I don't like to until I get a result that I feel like I'm really happy with. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean the brush and we're gonna move up color. I talked about this before, but my favorite method of cleaning the airbrush, take a pipette and take the water in and out a couple times This breaks up paint chunks that will have like settled on the bottom. And I think that can be one of the most difficult things, is that if those go down into the nozzle, you're going to have to do a more serious clean. So then I do a quick wipe out with the paper towel. This gets off most of the paint, and I'm kind of like, why would I bother running a ton of water through here or something when I can do that? So then I take a little bit, actually I keep my dirty water closer. I spray out, I do the backflow technique by plugging the front, let it spray for a minute, then I dump out this water and I do a second clean. That will get almost everything. So then I take some clean water, do one more run through, and here it's clean inside, clean coming out. So then I just dump the clean water, and I'm ready to go. All right, give me one moment, take a sip of water. All right. So now that we've got this, I'm gonna switch to that Wicked Pink. I really like this color because it's so saturated. So I'm gonna take some of this, and now we're gonna go in here. What's interesting is I feel like Army Painter paints went from being the thinnest, like way too overly thin, to actually pretty thick. So I'm gonna need a couple drops of thinner to really get that to flow nicely. Let's see how it goes. It looks about right. It's a little bit thick, but I always prefer to start a little bit thicker, and then if I need to thin it, much easier than doing the other way around. All right, that looks good. So I'm going to take one of these guys, and what I want to do is I want to hit each shoulder panel as an angle. So I'm going to pretend this shoulder has a light source, this shoulder has a light source, and then if there's something I want to hit in the back, I missed a little spot on that guy. Actually, let's do this one. So like one here, and then one along the backpack. And by doing that, I can make it interesting from whatever side you're seeing, even if that's less realistic lighting. I don't need everyone to be like a Golden Demon entry, so I just like to do something that I think is fun. So this time I'm going to be a lot more controlled with my airbrushing, and I'm going to maintain the same angle. So I'm going to hold the airbrush up at an angle. I would say it's about maybe like 60 degrees. And then I'm going to hit those armor panels all from one side. So let's start with this one. And I'm just going to do the center. You can kind of see you start glowing. So here now, the bottom of the armor panel is purple and the top has the pink. And I'm going to leave that and just not go to the bottom. And when I move up to the brighter color, I'll just hit the center of that pink dot I did. So I'm going to keep about the same angle and hit the wrist here. Okay. And then I'm going to hit the knee. And I sometimes cheat on the knees a little bit because a big part of that is when I'm hitting the knee, sometimes the shapes aren't very pleasing. So I want to make sure that it's something pretty good. Okay, actually, I think that's really nice. So it kind of looks like the light is reflecting off the circle of the knee pad there. All right, I might do just a little brighter here, just so I can pass. All right, now I'll do the backpack, which I consider the back part. For the backpack, I run a line straight down the center of this. So every time I try to be a little bit more in the center than I have before. So this part's a little bit more difficult. See if I can have you guys see there. So that there's a little bit of purple on both sides, just a bit, and then I'll do just a perfectly thin line down the middle with the brightest color when I get to the end. So then I'm going to do the right side of the shoulder. So similarly, I'm going to hit the top of the shoulder pad from one angle, and then I'm going to try to hit the knee from a similar one. Okay. And then lastly, try to hit the head in a similar way as this right shoulder panel. I've been really making the right side be kind of the main highlight, especially for the head. Okay. I'm gonna do a little bit of from the right, not as much as the left. That'll make it go more how I want. And then I like to do a strip just across the top of the armor piece on the chest, leaving the bottom of the armor piece purple. So this I do a little more exact. So as you can see, I'm not trying to go for realistic lighting, like I said, more something that'll just be kind of visually interesting from each way you look. So instead of doing the whole squad, I'm going to go ahead and clean out the airbrush again and move up to the final color, just so you guys can get a good idea of the whole process. So before I started painting, I did get the Emperor's Children like starter set they did. And for that, I really wanted to practice painting pink. So I had a few leftover Space Marines from the Indomitus box, which I did get a copy of back when it came out. So I tried some different pinks that I had, but I really feel like none of them were what I wanted. And I actually felt bad. I was like, no, how am I going to do this? They're too light. They're not right. I really got saved by the army painter having just the right one. I think a big problem is often they're not as saturated as I want. And then on top of that, I feel like they could often be too thin or not have good coverage. But this worked well. I was able to achieve what I wanted. This isn't even going to the highest pink they sell in this kind of range. This is only about the midpoint, but I feel like even the midpoint was quite bright. And when I tried to do even add white, if I could do like an ultimate highlight, it didn't really come across well. I think because it moved too far from saturation and was looking not enough like the color it was supposed to be. I think sometimes when we get too pastel, kind of lose what you're trying to do. So I'm gonna move in here. I go with this Pixie Pink. Just do a drop. Again, it's so thick that you can really get a lot out of just one drop, which is what I want. I feel like I'm getting a good deal. All right, so let's mix up that final pink highlight. Consistency looks pretty good, and we'll see what we can do here. We'll just clean off the tip of the airbrush. Perfect. All right, so this time I'm gonna go through everywhere that I did the middle pink highlight, and I'm just gonna hit like the really highest spot. Okay. Went a little too fast with that, so I have to cover up. It can be kind of hard, especially doing a bright color like this, because it gets thin, you might want to spray. So just starting a little bit, and then I use carefully, I kind of pull it back, some air from the airbrush to dry that. Go in, just add a little bit more. Wait for it to dry. If we let it run too fast, we can really end up ruining what we've done here. Oh, that's just what I want. Okay, look at... Oh. Sorry, my camera has a tendency to turn off. So here, getting that highlight just like that, we can see it looks like a really glossy smooth up to that top highlight. So that's just what I wanted. Now I'm going to try to hit the kneecap in the same way. Let's see. And do a line just along there. That way we can leave the back of the knee with the middle, and then just have that bright pink on the side. I'm going to do just a tiny bit on the arm here. And do just a little bit on this arm. I'm going to get real close and just do a tiny pass. Just like that. And then even this one in the symbol, it's cool because when you go and you color in like the detail in the symbol, um, you can see that gradient behind it and it'll look really nice. So it's a little bright, but I like to do it kind of away from the edge to really get that one well. And then we're gonna again do one on the kneecap on this side. Okay, and just a little bit on the bottom here. All right, dude, I'm gonna do a dot in the head and then we'll do the backpack. Okay, now for the backpack, we have to be real careful and go just down the center. Okay, let's see, can you see that? So you got that line running right down the center. I think that looks really nice to make it almost look like it's glowing. All right, and that's really how I do the base colors for this scheme. And I think it's pretty simple, only 3 paints. Like I said, I use, after a black base, Pro Acryl's purple, Army Painter's Wicked Pink, and Army Painter's Pixie Pink. And you get pretty good results, and ultimately something like this. You can see what I did here. You can see the purple kind of on the underside of the armor, and then the bright pink on the top. All right, give me 1 second. All right, so we got those done. Let's clean out the airbrush from that one. So you see here, there's some pink that's stuck down there. This is where I say that if you take a little bit of water in the pipette and you kind of flush it in and out, you actually can break that up pretty well. Okay, see, pretty clean, pretty fast. I found that was a lot quicker for me than just trying to line like the backflow technique or putting a brush inside the model, inside the cup. Okay. So another thing I'm trying to think of is, now that I'm doing the noise marines, how do I translate the color scheme that I've done here onto them? Let me take a sip of water real quick. So similarly, I think the armor, I can do the black cables, the black trim, and metallic elements. I think that'll come through pretty well. I'm excited because there's a lot more of these canisters. You can see there's 3 on this side and a big one on the bottom and a big one on the back. I think I'm going to similarly keep those the green, but maybe I'll introduce a little bit of the greenish blue as well to give some difference. And then here, I've done a little bit of this non-metallic gold on the sword hilt, and I don't want to do too much for infantry, but my goal is to do just a little bit of an element that could be that non-metallic gold, and I'm wondering if some part of the gun, this is the larger variant, the Blastmaster. We also have kind of the standard one. I don't want to do kind of the whole trim, but maybe like one little piece. That's kind of what I want to go through, other than for the kind of character models in the army. So I'm thinking of doing that as kind of a pop element. And then I noticed that a lot of the box art has the front of this gun almost like a light blue shaded, like a bluish green. I don't think I'll do something quite like that because I want to keep it in the color scheme. Maybe I'd even do it kind of a darker blue range, like the sword. I could do kind of a similar kind of shading that I've done on the sword here in the front, to contrast with the black and gold of the gun. And then I like that this one also has they have these tabards, which is something I really enjoy. I like that the Dark Eldar models I began with always kind of had these, because I think that painting cloth is really fun, because for me, it's something that's pretty easy to see my results. A big part of that was I like my slaves to darkness that I've painted. They have these red cloaks, and those folds are pretty easy to highlight because, like, even here you can see how you should highlight them, and that makes them really visually interesting, and you can have fun. I also think it might be nice to introduce a lighter element, because I could do those. I could do similar of like a skin texture that I did on this model. So if I take that kind of texture and put it here, I think it might also show kind of their status as elites, that they have these kind of nicer um, skin elements than maybe the other ones who just have them like bolted on or stitched on, but they have them made into these elements that are like nice and nicely cut. The other thing, you can't see as much on the first one, but on this guy, so they have these more greenish tassels that I enjoy doing too. You notice that there's some of these tassels on here. Another big fun part of the Noise Marines is that they have these different elements or different symbols on the back. Now that I'm thinking of it, this might actually be fun to do kind of that non-metallic gold. I could do kind of an interesting element on each that would go along with the kind of bronze color I'm doing for some elements on the backpack. So I think that would be pretty solid. But like I said, when I do a test model, I have to just kind of start painting and see how it goes to really get a feel for it. So now that we've kind of shown how to do those, I'm going to go back and clean up some of the other Noise Marines. I have a little bit of the purple to do. So a little bit more of my airbrush, a little bit more thinner. Okay. All right, so on this guy, I'm going to do a little bit more on the head here. I don't mind cleaning up the head too much with a brush, so I really just kind of like to get the main element done. You can also get the front of the armor here. This is something that I did on the other one that I really need to do, is have that front chest kind of armor plate painted as well. And then this arm here. Now, I'll say that I frequently, when I'm painting, I will miss elements, and I think that that's perfectly normal. I don't mind going back and cleaning things up or fixing something. That's also why I prefer not to batch paint, because I feel like when I'm batch painting, I'll miss more elements, because I'm kind of focused on finishing a model, getting to the next one, instead of really focusing on one and evaluating it from different perspectives. I feel that when you're painting one element, you switch to another and switch back, you can see where you've missed. But when you're batch painting, I feel like that can be kind of difficult. And again, some people might value the efficiency of batch painting, and it's more important that you just get something on your army. But I do think that painting is kind of my favorite part of the hobby, and I want my models to look the way I want. So I'll typically go a little bit of a slower route, and after the airbrushing, I'll do more individual elements. This guy looks pretty good. We just got to get his helmet. So he has a little bit of skin showing on his face. In my infantry squad, I haven't finished doing the skin elements yet, like the head. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do them. I've seen some really fun ones. I don't know if you guys have. On Instagram, El Miniaturista did a Emperor's Children model, and it was crazy. He made it look like they had their eyelids cut off, so he had these big open eyes that were really interesting. And I felt very thematic. As I was kind of saying earlier in the stream, I really like to have the lore be reflected in the paint, and so something like that can be really fun. We'll see kind of how their heads go. So like this guy you can see here, he has like a gas mask on, but then he has his forehead and his eyes narrowed, but his eyes are very thin, so it would be hard to do a specific element like that. So I'm gonna go through with this guy. Hit the head one more time. I think I could clean up the shoulder a bit. Do this arm. The Noise Marines come in a squad of 6 because that's like the chosen number of Slaanesh. But it's kind of interesting to paint a 6-man squad. Just feeling like used to painting 10-man squads. But these models are also very chunky, so in a way, painting 6 of them feels like doing a lot more. But I'm excited because they have a lot of fun detail that I'm going to enjoy sinking my teeth into. Let's see. This is another element I was saying. These like 3 armor panels in the back. When I was painting the infantry, I saw these and I totally missed them. So they're a little bit uneven. With some of them being more painted, some being black, some being purple. I tried alternating colors. I got this guy pretty well. I think it's funny to have these like 3 teeny armor panels right here on the back. But, you know, that's how it goes. This guy looks pretty good. All right. This one's pretty solid. I'm going to hit that armor panel again a little bit. Hit the chest. Here's our last guy. We just need to do his helmet. I really like ones that have hair. Oh, here we go, use backpack. One of my favorite elements about Warhammer, I know maybe other people think it's silly, but it's like the ridiculous like top knot like hairstyle. I think it's really fun to paint, and I think it's a fun element to include. Like these warriors with all this crazy equipment and stuff ends up actually just having this like long exposed hair. Their helmet's built for that. I just think it's kind of funny. And I think visually it's like a really interesting element because you can make the hair something really unique. So here's an interesting element. This leg is really covered by the gun. I will probably not go in and do the really highlight colors of the purple with this, but I will try to go in here and get that base purple because that's going to be our shadow. And so if we can get that in, and then we're not going to really go in and paint it because it's so dark, I feel like the viewer won't question it. It'll make a lot more sense. Okay. Get that guy in there. More in the backpack. All right. So we've totally finished up the base color on everybody. So now I'm going to go back in with the other purples and we'll just clean up the rest. So I am still finishing painting the infantry squad, which is the melee infantry squad called the Infractors. Some of these names they give them are kind of funny, but sometimes I like to break things up and work a little bit on another kit just to feel like I'm not going too long on one. I have some of my earlier streams posted painting one of those up from scratch. And I didn't do the skin elements. I already have that done, but I'll do that in another stream this week. All right. Then we have that done. I'm gonna get a sip of water and then we'll move on to the Wicked Pink again. You can see here how thick that paint is, that it really keeps in this blob. I'm telling you, Army Painter before would be like as thin as water. All right. Take that. Take our brush. Clean it. I'll do the backflow technique a little bit, make sure it's mixed. All right. So now we've got these guys. We're going to highlight the same way that we did before. I'm going to start with the right shoulder panel as kind of my main element. Get the head in a position I want. Okay, I went a little too heavy with the air on that one, so I'm going to let it dry and then just clean it up with another pass. Thinned it a little bit too much, I think, so I'm gonna go ahead and put one more drop. I used to feel really bad because, like, if I make it too thin, I have to put another drop of paint. It feels like I'm wasting paint, but at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, your model is expensive and you want it to be the way you want. So I don't worry about using supplies too much. I find that so rarely do I have to replace a paint. I think it's hilarious that I was ever so concerned about using too much paint or wasting it, when now I feel like I only replace a couple paints like a year, and usually that's because it's a Citadel paint that I've let dry out. So I still do use some Citadel colors. I started using only Citadel because I just grew up kind of in the Warhammer ecosystem, and while I think that the paint pots are really problematic, if anything, because just opening it, paint will surely get on the back, it'll surely dry, and then it'll cause the paint pot to end up not sealing again properly and potentially dry out all your paint. I still feel like there's some colors that I can't live without. My favorite Citadel paint is Corn Red. I just feel like it's my favorite base coat red that I see. And so I just, even if the paint is problematic, and even if I dry out a pot of Corn Red, I'll inevitably just buy a new one. I also really like, for a dark metallic, I like the Iron Warriors paint from Citadel. One of my big pet peeves is my metallics coming across in the beginning is too bright. I really don't like it if I can just see these true metallics. And then it kind of feels like it cheapens the model a lot for me. So I always take the darkest metallic I can find, which is usually the Iron Warriors, and then I put several black washes of it. I started with Nolan Oil, but I've lately gotten to oil washes, and I mean, truly, they're incredible. I feel like the oil washes changed how I paint. They changed my life. Best thing I ever used. But I'll go ahead and do couple black oil washes, really take down the metallics, including bronzes, like you can see here. So like with this guy, around there on the backpack, I started with a brass color and I took it way down. And then what I do is when I have this kind of like darkened black metallic, whether it be bronze or silver, I then just go straight to the highlight. I just do the brightest edges with the brightest highlight. And then that will cause it to go from this like this dark to this metallic pop. And I think the biggest thing in metallics, like especially if you're doing like a true metallic or anything, is contrast in the like the brightness. It wants to go from dark to something really bright as an adjacent color. And so I think that when you can dull down the true metallic and then have that kind of that dark right next to the light, you almost trick the viewer into feeling like it's much more realistic, despite you just used a true metallic paint. And that's really what I'm trying to go for. All right, I think, I'm gonna hit those back armor panels just a little bit. I mean, they're really in shadow, so I don't want to do too much, but just make it like some got in there. Oh, and then we'll do the head. Do it mostly from his right, a little bit from his left. Okay, the second one done. Okay, similarly, go from the front right, highlight the armor panel, Make sure to let this one dry. Especially, I feel like the issue with the paint flowing too much or not drying as well as I'd like, it's because this armor panel on the shoulder is really flat, and so the paint just kind of wants to glide over it. Okay. So we got that done. Just do the headline here. Okay. I'm gonna do a little bit on the elbow here. And then we were coming down from this angle, so I'm going to try to do a similar thing on the leg. Hit that like there. And then we'll do the right, or the left shoulder panel. Similarly to before, I'm just going to hit the top and then do a line across the arm. And for this one, similarly to the other one, I like to come from the front, so I'm going to do that on the knee. And that also helps me hit the knee pad at the same angle as the shoulder pad. Because while you could do the back of the leg, the knee has such an interesting rounded shape on these models, I want to make sure that I hit it. Okay, and then we're going to do one hit on the back armor panel. Okay, now that we're here, do a little bit on the backpack. Perfect. All right. Same with this guy. Pretty nice. Anyone in the chat working on any hobby projects right now? Doing any painting? All right, I'm gonna hit the top of the backpack. Hit that arm. I think it's just little panels in the back. And he's good. I forgot these guys. I'm going to do a little bit. So highlight on the chest. Okay. Just 2 more to go. Do a little bit right there. Hit the helmet. Hit the top of the chest. I'm gonna do the backpack. All right, hit the right shoulder. Now this knee pad is a little bit funny because it's facing down. So I think this will be a good opportunity to highlight this and then do an edge highlight later with the brush right on that edge. So I'm gonna hit the top and just work it down a little bit. That way you can see the light is coming from the top left as well. And then it fades to the back. And then, let's see. Yeah, we're gonna hit those back armor plates just a little bit. Just to have some interest later. All right, now we'll do this guy. This is the last one that we're gonna do with this color. He's a mostly skin-like head, so I'm not gonna go over that with this color. But again, we're gonna go from the top right and do our highlight. Make sure that's good. We're gonna hit the top of the chest. Hit the right armor panel. Go along his wrist. And then we're gonna hit the knee from the same area. We're gonna hit this leg similarly. This leg is cool because it have one of those skin elements similar to the other ones. Hit those back armor panels. and do the backpack. And good. We've completed the whole squad with the Wicked Pink. And now we'll finish up with the Pixie Pink. So my goal here is I got the Emperor's Children starter box, so I'm working through that right now. And I want to finish I did the 10 melee infractors and one squad of the Noise Marines. In total, there's 2 squads of Noise Marines and then 2 20-man squads of infantry. So my goal is to do the 10-man melee unit and then 2 5-man range units. That way I can take special weapons on both of the range squads, both for gameplay and because I'm really excited to paint some plasma weapons. I feel like you can just do so many fun effects, and I saw a picture of some Emperor's Children where the plasma gun was a really bright magenta for the plasma effect, and I plan to do that as well. For part of that, I was out of town a couple weeks ago, and I was in Washington State, and decided to stop by a little hobby shop there because I had some time to kill. And when I went in, they had these interestingly colored oil paints for a huge discount. They were meant for hobbyists, so they were colors like a bright magenta and a bright blue. But they were on sale for like, I think, under $4, which was a really, really good deal. And I was surprised. And they said that they just hadn't been selling well. So I got a couple of them while I was there, and some other hobby supplies I haven't tried out. I got a new brush from Vallejo. I haven't ever seen them have a brush for sale at any of the hobby shops around where I live. So I thought, I'll go ahead and get one. I haven't used it yet. We'll see how it turns out. I have like 3 backup brushes at this point. I was using the same brush for years. Actually, a Winsor Newton Series 2 like sable brush, like a real expensive one. It was lasting me super long, but over years, it actually stopped making a point well. I think some of the bristles at the very end that would have created the fine point just fell out after a long time. And so I was finding like my painting quality decreased, and I didn't know why. But actually at the end I was like, my brush just got old. And the only reason I figured that out was I bought a new brush for my wife, and when I used her brush, it ended up working really well. I got the Monument Hobbies Pro Sable, and this worked great. I love this brush. Cheaper than Winsor Newton, easier to find because I sell them in my local hobby store. I don't have to order them online. I actually ended up buying 2 so I could have one myself. And for now, I think I'll continue using those. They have a really nice point just starting out. And so using that brush, I've been able to get incredible detail, especially for tackling the Emperor's Children here with those green eye lenses. Eyes, for like many painters, were something that I found really intimidating and something really challenging. When I painted eyes before, it'd be this huge process of trial and error where I would go back and forth. I'd mess up, have to redo the whole thing over and over. But using that brush, I can get a fine enough point that still holds enough paint that I've been able to successfully paint the eye lenses with like multiple colors within that small space. All right. Oh. Excuse my camera. All right. So now I'm going to go and do the final highlight on the rest of the squad using the Pixie Pink. I said before, I try to just hit in the center, but it's really hard because these paints are thin and they want to flow, especially the lighter color. So I have to do a little bit, let it dry, do a little bit more, let it dry. But what I was saying before was that I ended up getting these oil paints, and in the blue and the magenta, both were really good for what I think are plasma effects. It might not be the brightest highlight, but I did a little test. I'm not going to keep this, but I'll show you. Getting distracted here, but this is pretty fun. This is that magenta oil paint with no change. I just thought, you know what? I just want to see how it works. So I thinned it a little bit and I put it in this melta gun and like, or not melta gun, plasma gun, and like, bam, I got this like really cool blue color. And if I was to go over this with some white oil wash and then do another pass, I mean, I'd almost have the plasma gun with no effort. So really, I can't recommend enough these kind of specialty oil paints. I'll show you the brand. So again, I got these on sale because they weren't selling well. But it's this 502 Fantasy Modeling Oil Color. Turquoise Lights. This is the one I used here to do this plasma gun. And it's super cool. I think if you had this and you had white, you could do like a really bright glowing effect, no problem. The other color I got was this magenta. To be honest, the magenta comes out a little darker than I'd like. I might mix in a little bit of white oil paint if I was using this just to get slightly brighter color, but the saturation is really nice. And then I also got just like a true, almost like an ultramarine. It says Gundam blue, so like definitely like a primary blue. I thought this might be really fun for shading certain colors, like especially if you had maybe, oh, actually what I'm using this for is that my wife is painting a Sylvaneth for Age of Sigmar. And the Tree Lord model, if you know, is this kind of like an Ent from Lord of the Rings. And it has these glowing runes in the bark. And for a long time, she had been struggling to paint those to get the kind of glowing effect that she wanted. But using the blue and then the bright turquoise in 2 passes, you can almost instantly get the glowing effect just by allowing that oil wash to settle in the recesses. This is a paint cup I used for the turquoise. You can see this color is how it comes out, and it really pops against dark colors. It'll show up over dark colors, maybe usually with 1 pass, but maybe up to 2. And so I think it's really nice. I can't believe I got it on sale. It was definitely a steal. So if you ever have an opportunity and you want to try out oil paints, all you really need I found was the paint itself, just some simple mineral spirits. People might have more thinning options, but I literally bought this at like an Ace Hardware clean strip. It works really well. And then an old brush you're not going to use anymore because you don't want to mix your acrylic brushes with oil brushes because it can break down your bristles. You don't want to put any expensive ones. I honestly just use the same cheapy brushes I use to mix paint in the airbrush. I mix those with oil, and I will often just use a pipette with some mineral spirits to get the oil off, and I think it works perfectly fine, going back to just being kind of a dirty brush for paint mixing. So if you're using oil paint like that, the one other thing was I found it was really difficult to have something good to mix in because it can be kind of messy. If you'll see here, I used some glass dishes and made a mess of these glass dishes. So I went on Amazon and I bought the 3-ounce cups like this, and they've been really helpful. They're only a couple dollars. And that's how I've been doing the black washes on my model. So if I come back here, black washes to dull down the metallics and to hit that kind of black ribbing in the body. I paint on the highlighted strips in that black ribbing and then just use the wash to repaint the recesses dark. And then I use a red wash mixed with a little black to do the blood effects, like blood flowing through the grout on these marble tiles. If you want to see how to make one of these marble bases, I did that on my last stream, and that's posted there. It's also posted on YouTube. So, yeah, I've really found that the oil washes have helped me tremendously. I've also applied a little bit of green to help with the hair there. So if you want to try those out and try out some cool effects, using some fun colors is nice. I actually started just with an oil wash set for like artist colors. So I had traditional ones like, burnt sienna and some primary colors, and those worked really well and have been good for paint mixing. But if you want some quick effects, choosing a paint brand that's more focused on models for oil paints will allow you to get some really cool effects. I was a bit skeptical, to be honest. I saw, I think, that brand of oil paint for hobby stuff before at a hobby store that I have in town, but it's on the other side of the town, very far away. So I don't go there often, and I didn't pick any up. And I kind of was skeptical that the colors would come out bright. And in the case of at least the turquoise, it really did come out exactly how I wanted. So I was really happy with that result. Okay, I went a little too heavy there. After that dries, I'm going to come back and clean up that lake. But now we're going to hit this other lake here. We'll come in from the top. I like to just do a line back and forth with the brightest color. Here, I'm going to go with this backpack again. Let's see if you can see. Just straight down the middle. And that really helps kind of create almost a glowing effect from the light. You can see in the shoulder panel, it helps feel like the model is definitely being lit. So I'm going to come back and do this lake now. Make sure when you're doing these really bright colors with the airbrush, they give it time to dry so you don't get that running like I did. After it dries, I can do a couple more passes. You can also use your airbrush to help the drying process, but don't do it too fast if your paint's too thin, because it'll cause more running. But after a few moments, I usually back the airbrush up a few more inches, just run some air and it'll dry. Okay, just checking the quality because it can be a little hard to tell. I really like on these models these kind of rounded kneecap areas because I feel like you can really capture the light well if you do them right. So I'm going to go through and just give it a little bit more. There, so now I got like a really bright highlight. I'm going to do just a little bit on the chest plate. I like the top of the chest plate to look like it's definitely hit by the light. And then one more part on the arm guard here. And we're good for that guy. Okay, so if you're just joining, this is what we're going for with full highlighting on the Noise Marines. And then ultimately, when they're finished, this is the color scheme I'm using. So I'm going to take this guy. I always start on the right shoulder panel because it's where I put my main highlight. But again, the shoulder panels are kind of tough because the paint really wants to flow across this smooth surface. I'm going to go ahead and add one more drop of the Pixie Pink to help thicken up the paint here a little bit. That might have been a little too much, but so be it. Okay, I'm going to mix that together. All right, I'm going to test it out down here. I'm going to do the backflow technique to help get that thicker paint to the front. All right, go back here and retackle that shoulder panel. That looks really nice to me. This one's a little bit hard for the light because the gun is covering the leg, but I'm going to hit just a bit of the foot on the hoof. And then the light isn't perfectly here, but I'm going to do a strip just across this armor panel. So I'm going to do it really thin. Just like that. I'm going to hit the top of the chest. I'm going to go across this arm right here. I'm going to hit that kneecap. Ooh, this sounds kind of funny. And then I think it's just to do the backpack. So I like to do one thin line just down the center of the brightest pink. And that'll help look like there's a really cool reflection going on. Now you'll notice I don't do the back of the legs with the brightest pink, and I don't do the armor panels on the back. That just helps keep the highlights from the top of the back the left and the right. I'm going to take a drink of water. All right. So now we've got him done. We have 3 more to go. All right, again, starting from the top right, armor panel. You know, it's having a much easier time since I added 1 more drop of that pixie pink and it's not running so much. That's what I'm saying. Really don't be afraid to add a drop of paint, even if you feel like you're going to waste it, if it means getting the proper consistency. Like, I know we all want to thin it down perfectly the first time, but if you're going to get a better result, I'm like, kits are expensive, and 1 drop of paint is not worth not having the model the way you want. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit the top of the armor. Get along the wrist guard. Do a little bit right there. Again, try to catch the edge of the knee pad there. So we can get something really good. And then go down straight down the center of the backpack. Now, you know what's interesting is when my wife has tried airbrushing, she often says that, you know, it's really difficult to understand where the paint is hitting in space. Like, imagine it in a 3-dimensional kind of way. It's interesting because I feel like it really comes over time in a sense of feel, which kind of seems like the obvious answer. But I feel that once you get it, you can even adjust somewhat. Like, one big change right now is, for the purpose of the stream, I'm angling my hand a little bit more toward the camera than I normally would. I normally keep the barrel of the airbrush almost directly in line with my line of sight to the model. And that does help me kind of place that highlight. But this time, it's really out of the way. And I would say in the first couple models, I was having a little bit of difficulty seeing exactly where I was hitting. But now that I've started going, I feel like I've gotten results. I feel like I've now completely adjusted. And I think that I would say to anyone who's just getting used to the airbrush, it'll be quicker than you expect, I think, to figure out where the paint is going in space. It's not something that you will struggle with, I think, for a long time, as long as you especially just base coat your minis. I'm like, if you just go with black or white and you go over all the minis, you'll eventually get something that you're really happy with. And I think that's when I was saying earlier that I airbrushed a design across my entire Night Hunt army that I got for Age of Sigmar. And just doing that over and over again with those models really allowed me to get comfortable with the airbrush and get comfortable doing some more advanced techniques. And I feel like it really just propelled me as a painter because I was able to get this kind of airbrush foundation pretty simply that now I can do with any color scheme and on any model. Ooh, got a little bit too thick there. There's a bit of a clog of paint on the end, so this guy went a little too hard. So we're gonna come back and clean that up. All right, it's just, I think I'm gonna hit a little bit more on this knee pad. And a little bit more on the shoulder there. All right. Now, let's see, we got the whole squad done with the airbrush. Excellent. All right, so I'm gonna move those out of the way and then clean the brush. So yeah, I'm gonna be going in a minute here, but thank you for painting with me today. I'm going to be working through the rest of this Emperor's Children army, and also going to be taking some days to paint some of my other models from various ranges. I have some Necrons, I have some Dark Eldar, I have some Lumineth from Age of Sigmar. I'll be doing those on different days this week. So if you want to keep seeing how I'm going with the Emperor's Children, you can tune in later this week or watch some of my past videos. I hopefully, after I complete some more of the infantry, I might tackle one of the characters or even just the elite for this squad. I'm really looking forward to showing you guys how I'm going to do that plasma gun effect. And let me see. Yeah, so I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. If you like this stream, please tune in more days this week. I'm hoping to be on tomorrow as well. Thank you very much. Have a good night.